Aqueous solutions undergo three major types of reactions, and we're going to study those reactions in this chapter. The first one we're going to take a look at is called a precipitation reaction. In a precipitation reaction, that's when you mix two solutions together and form an insoluble product or precipitate. So let's get that definition down. Precipitation reactions. They form an insoluble product. Or precipitate. Okay, and so that precipitate, this is the insoluble compound that forms from a reaction. All right, so let me give you an example. So here's an example reaction. You got PbNO3, which is aqueous. You mix it with 2 moles of Ki, which is also aqueous, and you form these two compounds, PbI2 and 2KNO3. Now, can you actually predict whether or not a precipitate will form? Yes. And it all depends on the solubility of the solute. So solubility is the maximum amount of solute that will dissolve in a specific amount of solvent at a given temperature. All right, so that was a lot to say, so let's start writing. So this is the maximum amount of solute that will dissolve in a specific amount of solvent at a given temperature. Okay, now chemists usually refer to substances being soluble, insoluble, or partially soluble. Okay, now in order to predict whether or not a precipitate's going to form, chemists follow these solubility rules. So there's like a set of rules that we use to determine whether or not something is going to form a precipitate. So we take a look at the products. And so here in the reaction we had, going back over here, PbI2 and KNO3. And so let me write these down just so we can keep these in mind. Now, Pb, if what we would do is take a look at the ions that we have in this compound. So you've got Pb2 plus, you've got I2 minus, or I minus. So now we're looking to see where are these ions falling in on this chart. So for instance, I minus is a halide, and halides are soluble except for halides of Ag plus, Hg2, 2 plus, and Pb2 plus. So right off the bat, this line tells us right off the bat that this is going to be insoluble. So that's going to be our solid. Now K, NO3, we can take a look at this. K follows into our first rule. So because K is in family 1A, those are going to be soluble, and there's no exceptions to that rule. So that tells us that this compound, KNO3, should be soluble. Now, to confirm that, nitrate ions also are soluble, and there are no exceptions to that as well. So that will be aqueous. So that's how, once we predict the products of a reaction, and we predict the products of the reaction. Remember back in the last chapter, we talked about the types of chemistry reactions, like double displacement, single displacement, and stuff like that. Once we predict the products of the reaction, we can use the solubility rules in order to help us in order for us to figure out what is going to be precipitate and what won't. So this is really important. You must know these. You must know these solubility rules. Now, in the next video, what we're going to do is apply these rules and help us figure out what really is going on at the atomic level for a precipitation reaction.